Good evening.
Good evening.
Can everyone hear me in the back?
Yes.
We were ready to get started on time, but it was such a nice social hour. I respect it. Glad to see everybody again. I see y'all are glad to see everybody again. So thanks so much for coming out this evening. It's such a beautiful day to be out, and we have a real good reason to be here together at Sankofa today. This gathering of wonderful women, icons in the community, coming together to help us celebrate another beautiful icon, Augusta Savage. And I have to admit that she's not somebody that I was aware of. It was only through Sandy's film, who you'll meet in just a moment, that I learned about her wonderful contribution to the African American artistic icon canon, and how she contributed to the development of so many artists that I do know. And that was wonderful she's very inspiring. So I was really happy to ask Sandy if we could show her film here, and of course she said yes. And I said, I want to charge tickets, and she said no. So here we are. Here together to enjoy this wonderful film, courtesy of Sandy Rattley. And I don't want to say a whole bunch more about the film. I want Sandy to give a brief introduction, and then we have a wonderful array of panelists to talk about the film. The film is about 20 minutes long, so it gets right to the point of Augusta Savage's life. And so we'll have time for a rich conversation afterwards. And I do want to say something about Sandy. And I'm going to read a very long bio and list of accomplishments because I don't know how many of us really know what Sandy does. If you're like me and really didn't know what Sandy does, raise your hand. Don't turn around and look. So I'm serious. We know Sandy as somebody who comes and she does she moderates our programs. She brings a really wonderful cultural and intellectual aspect to whatever we do together. And I know that she produces wonderful films, but I didn't know the extent to which she was involved in film producing. Maybe it's because I'm not really, a viewer of public TV that much. I come in and out, but I'm going to definitely watch it more. So I'm going to read this, Sandy. Sandra Rattley has over 40 years of experience leading and launching multimedia projects. She was executive producer, director, and writer of Searching for Augusta Savage, a 23-minute documentary about the prolific sculptor who was one of the most influential contributors to the Harlem Renaissance and leading artist in the U.S., the lead film for a new PBS series, American Masters Shorts. Rattley was also executive producer, director, and writer for Unladylike 2020, an animated documentary series about unsung women who changed America over 100 years ago, which premiered on PBS's biography series, American Masters, timed to the centennial of women's suffrage, and has attracted over 6 million viewers. With Charlotte Mangin, she is co-founder of Audacious Women Productions. Sandy was senior story editor of the Spotify podcast series, The Sum of Us, hosted by author Heather McGee. Rattley was also executive producer of seminal documentary projects, including the Peabody Award-winning series, Wade in the Water, about African American sacred music, produced by NPR and the Smithsonian Institution, and you can clap whenever you feel the spirit, because these are major accomplishments that I'm, going through. She's the African American series music produced by NPR and the Smithsonian Institution, and Making the Music hosted. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to start it again. Rattley was also executive producer in seminal documentary projects, including the Peabody Award-winning series Wade in the Water, about African American sacred music, produced by NPR and the Smithsonian Institution. Whoop, whoop. Making the Music, hosted by Wynton Marsalis, produced for NPR and PBS. Rattley served as executive producer for TV and video at the nonprofit journalism organization Futuro Media, where she launched the PBS series America by the Numbers, covering underreported stories about about America's changing demographics, and NBCnews.com's Humanizing America, profiling the diversity of the American electorate. Rattley is the former VP for cultural programming at NPR, where she launched the weekly show, Wait, Don't Tell Me. How many of y'all knew that? As well as NPR's Office of Civic Engagement. She serves as creative consultant for Black Public Media's 360 Incubator, a mentorship program for African American media makers. Rattley also founded, launched, and produced the Africa Learning Channel, a Pan-African news and information service streaming via WorldSpace satellite to over 100 million listeners in 51 African countries. Without further ado, I would like to my sister Sandy to join me up here and tell us about her film. She also happens to be the godmother of our child.
Really, all I really do value is show up whenever Haile and Sharik call. Thank you everyone for being here. Sharik, thank you for inviting this screening here to show this film. The title of the film is Searching for Augusta Savage, because this sister is a groundbreaker. In the 1920s and 1930s, she was a person who was championing Black Lives Mattering before there was such a slogan, in terms of centering Black lives and Black bodies in art exclusively. She did so many great things. So the question for me was, how could someone who was so accomplished have been erased? How can we not know her? So the idea of a search was searching for answers as to why someone who was so accomplished and so invested in our lives and our culture, how could we not know her? So I invite you to watch this short and really welcome your feedback and your questions and reflections afterwards. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. There's many, many things. So we're just so pleased that the fabulous, always fabulous, Dr. Eleanor Taylor is here. And we're also really, really happy to have Amber Robles Gordon with us today. She's a multidisciplinary artist, and please, if you don't know her work, please go to her website, Amber Robles Gordon, because when people talk about being multidisciplinary, but this woman works in every possible form. She was just talking about, before we started the film today, that she's working on a project about indigenous dance in Puerto Rico, Mamba, which is also very prominent throughout the Caribbean, and looking at that not just as a performance form, but also as an art form. And she's also an educator, and she is also a graduate of Howard University, and you know that also. So thank you to both of you for sharing the mic, sharing the stage. I just want to just talk a little bit about, first off, what did the film emit for you? I mean, in terms of what you felt. Sharikiana was saying what she felt about Augusta's spirit. I mean, what did her story say to you?
So one of the things, I don't think this is on, is it? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things I appreciated, just in relationship to being a Howard graduate, I graduated from the MFA program, I'm a Master's in Fine Arts, was that I wasn't searching for Augusta. I knew who she was. And I was like, even though, I mean, that drew me in when I got the email saying, Amber, you know, can you consider this? And I saw the title, and I'm like, oh, but I know who she is. And there's something about that feels filling. And so I even though I absolutely loved the film, and that's why I said yes, but there was something that was so gratifying to say, but I know this, I know her. What I did, like one of the things I appreciated the most was that you got, it was just beautifully, collectively pieced, parceled, you know? Yeah, that was the most important thing for me, was that one, I knew her, and then I felt that you delivered her story, and although it was short, it was very well articulated and compiled, and I loved her voice, the voice of yes. The fact that it was her, like it was a familiar voice, but it was very specific to her. It felt like her energy, and so I really appreciated that as well.
I just need to say that it's so interesting to me that women artists all know Augusta Savage. Other people may not, but black women artists know Augusta Savage. And also, a lot of people say that they were taught Augusta Savage at Howard University in the study of the black art of the Harlem Renaissance.
Absolutely, that's what I said. And I will say, like in high school, because I focused in high school. I focused on photography and art history. And I remember those drone art history, you know, classes, where the AP classes, where it's what was that thing they called it back then? It's a film. It's a, oh Lord, I'm forgetting terms.
Microfiche.
Yes. No.
The slides.
The slides.
The carousel.
Yes. So picture after picture after picture after picture. And none of them introduced, wasn't until I got to Howard, until I made a decision that I did not want to go to, because I was in magnet schools earlier in my education. And I had to make a decision that I don't want to go to another magnet school in that way, that I wanted to go someplace where it was my education would be specifically regarding blackness. So, yeah.
That's why we have to hold on to HBCUs for dear life. Because that's where the culture is, that's where the knowledge is, that's where the true evolution of knowledge is. I'm not knocking anything else, I'm just saying that what we have been sort of, I don't think I need it.
Oh, you
No.
do?
Do I?
We can't hear you in the back.
I can't hold this thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, I can hold it, but it distracts me. Can you hear me now? Oh, yeah, I can hear you. It's just that we've been conditioned to thinking that our art, our literature, our certain ways of being in the world, our manners, our textiles, our dress, were side effects. We were the sideshow of American life. Not so. From always, we were and are the main event in American intellectual and cultural life. That's not chauvinistic. That's just so. You know that piece, the harp
Yes.
that you saw there? That piece of sculpture that was huge and was one of the main attractions of the 1939 World's Fair in New York. Miss Savage didn't have the money to cast the piece in a material where it could be preserved. You know, it was just a matter of coins. You know, you just didn't have money. That piece was the rave, it was the star of the show, you know. But you see it, it breaks your heart even just to think about it. You saw it. It was demolished because they couldn't do anything with it. They couldn't move it, you couldn't carry it, and everything. So you thank God you have the, yes. But look, there was nothing to equal that piece. My darlings, there's nothing going on in that period in America. You know, you talk about sculpture, people start talking about Giacometti and Rodin. That happens across the water. They're in Paris, I mean in America. There was nothing to rival that piece. And you know, it comes out of humble beginnings. She started that little, it was probably a little, a studio no bigger than your living room. You know what I mean? No bigger than the kitchen. But that produced some of the greatest artists, not only in this country, in the world. You know? Nobody has done a migration series like Jacob Lawrence. Come on. Nobody has, you know? But anyhow, all of that is what you raise. And it's gonna be so much more now. Ooh, you're gonna see what happens. If you had to search for Augusta, my darling, you don't have to anymore. Because I think that the way, you know, just even popular culture, just even the fad, you know, people just go the way, you know, think it's gonna turn toward this. This book by Jeffreen M, who was the author of Searching for Other. I was looking for this book, I didn't have it. I wanted to buy it. I thought I could just, this book costs a pretty penny, as it is. But you know, there is an edition of this book for $4,000.
Wow.
This is now a major attraction, you know. So,
I just want to share that this film is 24 minutes. It could have been a full-length film because this woman's life was so expansive. She was born in Green Cove Springs, Florida. Her homestead, where that community center is placed now, was destroyed by a hurricane. And so there was no visual documentation that existed of her before the age of 29. No baby pictures, no high school yearbooks, nothing. So we used actually some AI assisted, and an artist came up with those early scenes about her birth and her making the ducks with clay when she was 5 years old. But there's so much about her life that we were not able to include. She was being hounded by the FBI. I mean, you know, because she was such a political person. And she was also being hounded by a white eugenicist that was stalking her. I mean, this woman's like, she married a man who was the Secretary General of the UNIA. And so she was also a black nationalist. And so we're talking about the 1920s and 1930s.
Marcus Garvey's organization.
Marcus Garvey's organization, United Negro Improvement Association. And he went to Liberia to make arrangements in terms of the negotiating passage for African Americans to Liberia. And this was probably 4 or 5 months after they got married, and he died at sea on his way back to Liberia. I mean, so this woman's life was, I mean, so tumultuous, so dramatic, but all that she accomplished in the face of all of those hardships is really pretty interesting. So, Amber, I wanted to ask you as an artist, obviously, she was creating at the time of the Harlem Renaissance. You are a contemporary artist. And one of the things that the curator at the Met, the comment that she was making, is even today, in most of the major museums, there are very few pieces of work that are included by Black women artists. So do you see parallels in your life and career with Augusta Savage, or do you feel as if you're having an easier time in terms of getting commissions and getting museum dates, etc.
Okay, so we're talking about a totally different, time frame. So I want to say, one, there are more women artists in general in this time period that we're in. They're more successful, more exposure, more in relationship to being represented, being in collections. So we have made progress, but the problem is of course, is that we are still living in a patriarchal society. So even when women of color, and specifically Black women, made progress, you still are competing with white men that are always here, and then you have other men that, the trickle-down effect. But I will say that for all that she went through, and then she, at the end, the quote where she says, if I can be remembered based on what I've taught, basically what I've taught others, that I will herald that. And not that I want to downgrade her life in any shape or form, but she's monumental. And what she did is monumental, and that is being carried forward. That is being carried forward in my life. I mean, when I looked at the original video, I just saw parallels, not necessarily in terms of what was not successful, but what was successfully, projected in my life through being taught about her and learning about her path and her struggle. Almost to the point where when I went back and I was watching it, I was like, wait a minute, she didn't go to Howard? I was like, I felt like she was so ingrained in my path, in my journey as a contemporary artist, that for some reason I had given her, HU privilege. So yes, it's hard or it's challenging, but I will not claim anything like that in 2024. I can't.
Both of you have made a commitment to education. Obviously, I mean, Eleanor, you helped me get out of Howard. And so you were very instrumental in my education, since basically my undergrad degree is in English. And it's interesting that Howard played a real particular role, even though Augusta may not have taught there. Lois Mailou Jones did teach there, Elaine Locke did teach there. You talked earlier, Eleanor, about the role of HBCUs. I mean, also in the film there was a point that a lot of HBCUs do have their own museums or art centers, but a lot of them still may not have work by Augusta Savage. What do you think that HBCUs should be doing moving into the future in terms of supporting Black art and Black artists, and especially Black women artists?
Well, I think they've been doing it, and I think they should continue, and will. I think we already have what we've been wishing for. We just have to do it more. But I just want to get back to the question that you put to Amber. And what those women artists did was to take on the double trap of race and gender at the same time and fight it both ways. And she did that. And that cost a lot. Because race is one thing, but gender is another. Then when you come to gender at home, in the interior, this little child was equipped because she made little images, those little ducks and things. Her daddy was a preacher, and he whipped her because he said she was making graven images and all like that. She had to overcome that. And then there was the question, the Renaissance was a time of great self-expression, great vision, of great freedom. you know, all of that. And it was spelt globally. I mean, diaspora began there. But the interesting thing is you had the problem of what we call class or caste to deal with. You know, you had on one hand these wonderful writers, Anne Spencer, Marita Bonner, Nella Larson, all those people. But they were a part of what is called the genteel tradition. Mm-hmm. They were women who were approved of. But then you have artists who were fantastic and original, like Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, and those that you call the blues, and they were considered. Can you hear me?
That's much better. Here we can't hear you.
They were considered not. It was a problem of respectability. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And your whole character sort of relied on that. Zora Neale Hurston was outrageous. Now, did you see how I'm dressed? This is outrageous. And I came here, I put that hat on my head. The Beyonce, January, can you give me that hat? Beyonce has started this. Have you ever heard of a country western tradition? You know, like I just left the Delta Convention in Chicago. And you know, every woman in the place had on this. You couldn't do, that's not respectable. That's outrageous behavior, you know. So on. So they had to navigate that challenge. I mean, the idea of achieving your own independence, you know, the idea of your own expression, which art required, that was not the role of women. And black women are not the only women who suffer that. I mean, whenever there's been an upsurge, an uptick in creative activity, something peculiar happened, not peculiar, something interesting. In the 19th century, you know, you hear of the period of the Romantic poets, Wordsworth and Coleridge and Byron and all those people, but you heard of them, but you didn't hear of the women who were writing and outselling them. Mm-hmm. They were writing Gothic novels like Carrie McMillan. You know, those kind, the just common interest, popular cultural. And the men got very upset and started publishing things that y'all ought to go home and take care of the kitchen and so on. It happened to Zora Neale Hurston. Even our beloved people like Professor Brown and all of them persecuted Zora Neale Hurston because of her expression. But Zora Neale Hurston is the very godmother of modern art in terms of using the tradition of the folk, the language of people, real people, the way people eat, the way people talk, the way people live, and so on. And that is a tradition that feeds, even now, creative activity in fiction. Anyway, all of that. But she is a prime example of that. That and what we call the politics of representation. I'll shut up when I just want to.
So, can you repeat the question that you originally asked? Because I want to answer it, please.
Okay.
About the HBCUs?
Right. I wanted you to talk about also your commitment to education and what you've done yourself in terms of teaching young people art, as well as the role of HBCUs in promoting Black art.
Yes. Okay, so definitely I got my undergraduate from Trinity College, and it was in business, and it was because I don't think this is actually on.
It's on.
It is? Okay, so then I just need to speak up. All right, I can do that.
Okay.
My undergraduate degree is in business because I knew I wanted to be an artist. I basically decided, well, that I need to be able to run a business. And then my graduate degree is from Howard University, and it's a master's in fine arts. So what I want to talk about really quickly is about the role of HBCUs in relationship to the art and the artist and their careers, and then their continued continuum. I was just talking to a fellow artist, Aziza Gibson-Hunter. She's actually back there. And we were talking about the continuum in relationships to artists when they are either getting older and or when they pass away. You know, one of the aspects of that, of the canon, right, the academic canon that happens for artists while they're living, when it comes to predominantly white schools, is that they have figured out how to create canons. Meaning, and if you don't know what a canon is in relationship to academics, that you can picture it. Someone who's educated, you know, someone who has a goal, a set of goals in terms of their career path, and they're going to school, and you want to project them forward, right, up and so that they continue living. And HBCUs, we need to also hold them accountable in terms of what happens while you're in school, what you're specifically being taught, not just the aesthetics of your craft, whatever that may be, but also then how to take that craft into the world and create an actual career and income. And this is not just, you know, one artist. This is something that happens with the academic in relationships to art in general. Artists are not necessarily taught how to be entrepreneurs. We like to think that artists are just like, I'm one of the one possible percentage of people that have good ideas and creative and can make their ideas into something that's aesthetically pleasing. But the world doesn't just work like that. You know, that doesn't equate to a monetary value. And so then once you've become successful, then there's that the other schools have managed is that how do we continue to raise the profile of the artists? How do we continue to keep them involved in the industry itself? How do we keep them alongside their peers? How do we create programs to bring these artists back in to talk about their work, to educate the younger artists that are going through their own, you know, matriculation in terms of their degrees? It's a continuum. And that's what needs to be educated. That's what needs to be funded. In addition to, when artists pass away, or even before they pass away, what happens to their works? Our works are ending up in other people's hands, and that is effing problematic. And I don't understand. Like, I hope you guys understand what that means, because art is wealth. Art is an asset. Art it's a continuum, not just in terms of what aesthetically you're putting out into the world, but also it's an aspect of our culture, because artists are visual documentarians. And I'll let that.
Those are amazing points. Thank you for making them. And I think it does also reach back to Augusta's life, because she was so dedicated to making sure that other artists, that her peers, had a pathway to commercial success. At the same time that she was working in a laundry. And even after those people got successful, they didn't reach back and say, "Sister, thanks, share this, this billing with me." In addition to the fact, I think the whole idea about the question that I'm trying to raise with this film, which is the question of erasure, as you were talking about a 16-foot sculpture of 12 black children singing, dedicated not only to the Black National Anthem, but also to James Weldon Johnson, who had died the year before. So it was a double tribute to black culture as well as to him. At one point, Fisk University was talking about transporting the Lift Every Voice and Sing there, because James Weldon Johnson was a graduate of Fisk, but that never materialized. And so a lot of the visuals, for example, of Augusta Savage's work, actually only some of those works only exist in this film, because we had to search to, in Paris and some publications, in the media, etc., to find even the images of what she produced. And one of the questions I kept raising, which was very hard to get anyone to address, is why is it that the most African-looking pieces of her work are the ones that are missing? So, I mean, these are really critical questions, but it's in line with what you're saying in terms of what are the organizations, what are the processes that we're putting in place to make sure that, as you said, art is not just something that's an aesthetic exercise. It does have value, it reflects our culture, and then what are we doing to support artists long term, especially as our artists are aging out. And I mean, Augusta Savage basically, when she could no longer work, was being supported by her daughter, who was continuing that legacy of working in a laundry. And I mean, just like Zora Neale Hurston ended up doing domestic work, just like Nella Larson ended up doing domestic work. How can people this great, that are this important to our culture, be left in a situation where they are not supported in the end years of their life, as they have contributed so much to us? So at this moment, we would like to turn the lights around and invite the comments and questions from.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
Do we have questions and comments? Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for introducing her to me, and the film was beautifully done, so I really appreciate the work. So 2 questions. One, I want to make sure I didn't mishear or misunderstand the film, but I thought it said at the Schomburg they did have original pieces there.
The Schomburg has the largest collection of Augusta Savage work in a public institution, and they have 22 pieces.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, the Met just did the Metropolitan Museum of Art just did a huge exhibit on the Harlem Renaissance and transatlantic modernism, and so they borrowed 2 pieces from the Schomburg to place in that exhibit. So, oftentimes the Augusta Savage work they have is often not actually on display, but they are loaning it to other institutions.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And then my second question was, well, more of a statement. I thought it was kind of sad that she felt like the community wasn't ready for her art center, because I thought it was just a matter of poor timing or unfortunate timing, because it was right during the Great Depression.
It's interesting because so the Lift Every Voice and Sing, her exhibit, she actually paid for having souvenir, smaller, versions of it made. So she thought that people in the community, because as Eleanor, Dr. Traylor said, it was such a big deal in the Black community. It was humongous to have this piece in this theme of that scale at the World's Fair. It was a big deal. It was huge. Everyone was so excited. It got so much press. So she assumed that she was going to be able to, part of the way she was going to be able to keep her art center open was by selling these. And again, as you said, it could have just been bad timing. But when she said the community didn't support her, she was really talking specifically about the sale of those miniatures. I don't know what the price point was.
Go ahead,
No, I don't.
Yes.
My name is Kwaishiba. Thank you all for each providing your insight, and also for you, Sandy, for helping to create this film. I learned a lot today. My question is, what is each of y'all's favorite piece by Savage and why? Or maybe the first piece that really moved you?
Well, it's going to be easy for me to answer the question, maybe a little harder for the other.
Ain't hard for me.
Yeah, because I've looked at all of her work that is currently available. The piece that is the most important to me is actually the last piece that you see right before the credits. And it's, again, a monument that she made, because she made 4 pieces that were actually large scale, not as large as Lift Your Voice and Sing, but large, full scale monuments. So this piece was called Realization, and it was a Black woman seated and a man sitting on the floor, kind of a little behind her. And it was titled Realization, and she said it was the realization of this Black man and this Black woman, the realization of what being enslaved actually meant in terms of their, the assault on their personhood and their spirits. So to me, that piece means so much because, I think as Amber just said, it's aesthetically, the fact that she was able to get such emotion in clay and in plaster, which is actually a very hard and brittle, material. But that she actually had a psychological subtext in the piece of work. That she always had a narrative in terms of what she was saying about the Black experience. So that piece, to me, the end. Going through her papers and going through the collection of work that's at the Schomburg, they actually have letters from Alain Locke, who is considered to be the father of the new Negro movement, who for whatever reason around this issue of class, as Eleanor was talking about, because he was Harvard educated and he never felt that Augusta had enough education. She was from poor beginnings, she came from a rural area. She was really, until she went to Cooper Union, she was self-taught. And for some reason, well, I won't say for some reason, he was very jealous of her and was constantly questioning why she was getting so much attention, so much press. And there are letters that suggest that, the last time that piece Realization was exhibited was at a show in Chicago. And there's some evidence that he may have actually had something to do with that us not having access to that piece of work. And, writing letters to suggest that people heckle her when she was giving speeches and things. It seems unconscionable, but this is what happened. Sorry, Realization is my favorite piece.
So to add on to that, I was recently at the Howard University Porter Colloquium in April, and there was a person giving a presentation regarding, it might have been the Renaissance. But to add on to what you were saying, I was shocked at how much visceral, was organized, negatively organized against some of the women, specifically in the artists, the female artists in the Harlem Renaissance, and specifically artists that were practicing professors at Howard University, that some of the men orchestrated specifically to keep them down, to keep them out of equal pay, or being paid appropriately, and or advancing their careers in relationship to being teaching, and in relationship to being professional artists. It just hurt me. when I heard that. Okay, and so then to answer your question in relation to, I don't have a specific work, but I'm gonna tell you a personal thing. I can't stand getting dirty. So one of the reasons why I can't do sculpture and is because I can't, the thought of it just, like getting my hands dirty to that degree, just, it's torture. So, but I say that knowing that the amount of passion and the amount of knowledge and the amount of dedication that has to be utilized in order to execute some of the tremendous sculptures and detailing, like lifelike detailing that she's able to execute in her work is just phenomenal. Then, in addition to that, I just, like the woman said, the curator at the Schomburg, when she said that she can feel when an artist loves us. And that's why I love Augusta's work. I've been in front of one of her sculptures that was like life size, and you can feel with the amount of detail and execution that she renders that she loved her people. And that is what I appreciate. And just the parallels, like the Schomburg, so my work is in the Schomburg's collection. So all these things in relationship to how we've moved, you know, generation after generation, we keep on moving. We are moving forward. It's absolutely happening, so.
I like the laughing boy. I like the little girl with pigtails. I like John Henry. You know what those pieces realize? I mean, all the way through her work, she just dismissed the images that were being created of us. We were being created with watermelon lips and all kind of stuff, and she made those beautiful images of the children like they are. She made childhood come through there so beautifully, just gorgeous. You know Paul Ernst Dunbar? Now the criticism against Paul Ernst Dunbar was that he used that stupid language, you know, the plantations, but he broke through it. And somehow, you know, you got the essence of a way of being in the world that you wanted to share. If you didn't recognize it as your way of being, you wanted to be it. You know what I mean? So when Al Smith in 1970, January, made that triptych of the party that he based on Paul Ernst Dunbar's poem, there was a party last night, so you ought to been there, I can't tell you about. Well, Al put our faces in that picture. You know, he based it. It's a picture created in the 70s of his colleagues, us at Howard University. We're all teaching there. And we're in, he and his wife are in it. I'm in it. Tony Bambara is in it. Sherman is in it. And so on. You know, you can so it was that. It's that real, that kind of thing. So that, you know, what I talked about, the politics of representation, that's what I mean. How we are represented. Those women broke through it and set it straight. They did. And that was one of their greatest contributions to.
So I just want to add that Augusta Savage was a realist. And she was also critiqued for that. Jeff Donaldson, basically, you know, a bunch of other black artists basically critiqued her because they said that she should have been doing abstract art and not realism. And she's like, I'm doing black people.
That's right.
That's what she said.
Well, that's what they did for Zoe.
Yes,
Those
exactly.
That was the same critique.
Exactly.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for doing this, because I, like most people in this room, did not know who Augusta Savage was. And really thank you for bringing Dr. Trailer here. But my question is pretty simple. What led you to Augusta Savage?
Hi, Kojo.
Hey, Sandy. It's only been 50 years.
As a documentarian, I have been doing biographies for some time, but I didn't really understand that I was going to land in a pocket specifically for a while, at least focusing on women, especially women of color. So I worked on a series. It was called Unladylike 2020. We made, with some historians and humanities scholars, came up with a list of 250 women whose stories were lost or forgotten. Chose 26 out of them, and it was an agonizing choice to try to find 26 women out of 250. But again, I mean, just like this is a 24-minute film, because that's all I had the money to make, all we could pay for was films for 26 women. And so Augusta Savage did not make it on that list. And a lot of because the Unladylike 2020 was timed for the centennial of women's suffrage, a lot of the women who were the women of focus were abolitionists and were focused on more civil rights and nation building and that sort of thing. So it felt really important to me that we needed to see the story of a woman who was an activist in the realm of art, who was really a political activist as an artist. That's what led me to Augusta. As well as, I think what Eleanor and Amber also said, that we do not know as much about the women of the Harlem Renaissance and the women of that time period. Thanks for coming, Kojo.
Good evening. I'm glad that.
And he said thank you for coming. He was glad to see you today.
Hi, Dr. Trailer.
Yes, sir. Oh, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad you're here.
Any other questions?
Here, it's already.
I had started, but I.
Go ahead.
Am I on now? Okay. I had to write it down so I wouldn't forget here. Thank you for making the film. I did know something about Augusta Savage. In my family history research, I found out that my mother and her sister, who lived here in Washington, D.C., were taken to the 1939 World's Fair by their mother, my grandmother. And I did some research on it, and I remember there was very little out there, and I wanted to find out, where did you get that footage from? Because the research that I found was very little showing black people at the fair. And I remember reading that they had Negro Day, when the Negroes could come and see certain exhibits that were pertaining to their culture, as they would say. So that was my first question, is where did you get that footage? And I just wanted to say, as far as collecting and buying black art, I did attend pre-COVID at the David Driscoll Gallery at the University of Maryland. His best friend, Curly Hilton, I believe is his name. They had several seminars over a period of months where they were helping people learn how to look at art, collect art, purchase art, and those were very instructive. And there's a woman in New York who has a gallery in Harlem and just opened a branch in Brooklyn. And she did also during COVID Zooms where she was trying to tell black women to start collecting art as an investment, like you buy stocks and bonds. And she mainly represents young African artists and Caribbean artists.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but we can't see you. Can you stand? And
I'm done.
okay, thank you. Tell us your name.
Jennifer Holmes.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Okay. One of the reasons why it was interesting that Augusta was the only African American artist and one of 4 women who were commissioned to create art for the 1939 World's Fair is that that World's Fair was the first World's Fair that Black people were allowed to attend, at least one in the United States. And you know, the thing about research is that you never know what you know, you look at one thing and it leads to something else. So we happened to find that footage of Black people at that World's Fair totally by accident, looking for something else. But basically for this film, I have an archival researcher who you know, who just dug for all of that. So I can't tell you specifically the source, but if you want to know, I can give me your contact information. I can share that with you. What was your other?
I didn't have a question. It was just a statement about collecting and purchasing Black art.
Thank you.
Can I respond? So I just want to point out that even though this was the first World Fair that that African Americans were invited to, it was not the first, because the original one in Chicago, they were, people of African descent were there, but they were there in cages. They were there in exhibits. So I just want to contextualize in relationship to what we are talking about now and being an artist to be commissioned to do, because I've done artwork about the first World Fair. And so the juxtaposition, just, I could not say something about it.
I just want to express my complete congratulatory remarks to Sandra Rattley, who not only as a community member, but just seeing you worldwide and seeing you at such a time in life where people are trying to calm down and find their space as we move to eldership and what have you. You are just a role model for keep going forward. Keep pressing on. Don't stop. Thank you. And of course, Eleanor and baby Amber in the But it reminds me that what was going on then, the Harlem Renaissance, in terms of Black women artists fitting in. I remember hearing Faith Ringo's story and not being accepted by Romare Bearden and a group of, I think they had, I forgot the name of the mention. But yeah, at least 4 various well-known artists did not accept her. Because I think because she was doing quilting and her and people. Yeah, well, you know, they tried like that's women's art. That's yeah, craft, yeah, and try to separate that out. And also a good friend of mine, Valerie Maynard. Oh yeah. I learned so much from Valerie, a woman who added so much to the table of fine art. Yeah. And I heard her story of struggles too, trying to fit in and get in and what have you. And I'm glad that she had the personality and the wherewithal to stick with it and keep moving forward as well. Those are the kind of role models that I think we need. Not the ones that's in the books or the museums. Just keep looking around. You'll find them. The ones that just keep pressing forward with the ideas and be relentless, as we say, about what we put ourselves to. Thank you.
So I saw, first Haile said he wanted to speak and then he said no, so.
No,
Haile.
No, in fact, please, should we give me back. You know, because I'm kind of in a very interesting intersection. Watch the film, and I'm very grateful that it could have been lost, but you guys have captured it. I'm grateful. It's very, you know, something, you know, we could sit around and judge without knowing what work went to get this whole, whatever you got. However, you know, we talked about the quantity, the lost, etc. It's very, very important that this film is made. Yeah. And it's for me, it speaks about many things. That's why I was going to change my mind, because the second point I want to make is the class nature of black people seems to be underestimated even in this room as we talk. Black people measurement of aesthetics is white supremacist. And I think we have destroyed so much of the past. And we're going to continue, because if an artist is not commercial, wants to stay depicting what you said about that African essence she did, which I felt was the most powerful part. But at a time when the African aspect of black people was being destroyed. If you take the Gullah Geechee story, that Zora Neale, when I first went to the South Carolina area and start working on the Gullah Geechee area, all the way to Mexico and Oklahoma, I didn't know what she was writing about. And what the black bourgeoisie was having a problem with her, because she was empowering the real people. So there's a correlation between this sister. After seeing my film, your film, I saw this Gullah Geechee, the whole diaspora of the Gullah Geechee. When I first came to Howard, Gullah Geechee was an embarrassing thing for students who came from a Gullah Geechee community. And this is how outrageous we are in destroying our footprints. And so for me, this is serious. I'm sad, because I would like to give my work to Howard University. But Howard University doesn't have the brain. After having served that prison wall for 43 years, I can say what I want, especially in black meetings. And that is, I do not trust their brain trust. Although UCLA wants my stuff, other school wants my stuff, I don't trust Howard, but I want to give it to Howard. Then there's all these historic black schools who have not the endowment Howard has. The money Howard wastes can finance all the other black schools to preserve black culture. And so for me, the artist, where do you leave your work is the question. Not yet her time, but is more outrageous now. Sterling Brown, who my sister there helped me really revive it at Howard itself, because I made it at Howard, because he's the most unwanted professor, but he's the most progressive professor, custodian of so much history. I made a film on him. Well, we made a film on him. And so the material of Boston White University wants it. Not black people, not Howard. I keep saying, we have material, we have sound, we have excess films that didn't make it into the film. Like, I think you have the same stuff, the outtake we call it. I have sound, I have picture. Who do I give it to? It's in the basement here, in uncontrolled infrastructure. So for me, it's not only that I give my stuff or artists give their stuff, but how is it, what that institution has to preserve? And what are black people, how much are they spending for culture? I know we go to Grocery Giant, all of us go to Safeway, but how much do we invest on the cultural nutrition of these things that we all try to collect and scram? So that's why I was going to stop not saying, because it would be so, the spirit is so good. We saw this film, and I didn't want to bring this toxic part that is hurting me so much, bouncing left and right. And I'm sorry if it disrupted people, but it was weird.
I'm going to spell it for you, because I think it's this generation's work to do the art of preservation and recognition, and they are doing it. They are removing the monuments that disgrace us and displacing them with the real monuments that speak to the culture of this place. And I know it's going to happen. And we have both come through the trials of our institution. But it has got to stand. It has done, if it only is a conduit for you. It is the conduit for you by which we can see that marvelous film that changed my life, that you created, that Kojo Nambi created in a series of informational communication to deliver a community. So forth, we can go on and on. But I'm just so proud of this generation in terms of what they are doing now to preserve a culture which they now more than ever appreciate. And if this Vice President of the United States is elected president, the whole world is going to open up. On women, there is going to be another, well, you know, there have been renaissances, and renaissances happen every day. You know what I mean? They are just a new birth, a new surge of creative activity, a new surge of life. You know, the thing now is when you meet somebody like my granddaughter up there, and I'm meeting her for the first time. This is Tony Kay's granddaughter. And she came up and said, Auntie Ellen, and I said, you are giving me life. This is a time where life is being given again, you know? And so what we have suffered highly and what we've gone through is on its way to resolution. They're going to preserve you. You are going to be considered one of the greatest filmmakers of an age. Don't worry.
On that note, I wanted to
Can you please tell us your name?
Oh yeah, my name is.
I'm going to ask you to stand, but we can't see.
Yes. Okay. My name is Aziza, and I wanted. I wanted you to know that there will be a panel discussion tomorrow, August 24th, from 5 to 7 at the Yard, 700 Pennsylvania Avenue, and the topic is how to secure your art's value. But really what we're going to be discussing is legacy and how do we protect it, how do we develop it, and we hope that folks will come out and learn about what the things that you can do to preserve our legacy. Because we've got to leave those little crumbs, that crumbs of information. We have to leave it so that our scholars can get to it. And it may take a couple generations for them to get to that information, but we have to leave it. Our elders have to respect what they've done, and all these years that they've spent developing this culture. We have to respect it enough to leave pieces of it for our future scholars to discover and make the scholarship and develop the scholarship for our children's children's children. But there's things that we have to put in place. And that's what this panel discussion will be talking about.
Say it again, where?
Okay, it's at the Yard, 700 Pennsylvania Avenue, Southeast, and
Time?
the time is from 5 to 7.
It's the husband that's talking.
Yes. and so before she sits, I mean, you don't have to stand up for this, but she's not telling me, this is Aziza Gibson Hunter, and she's the woman that I was referring to, that I was in conversation with earlier. But the organization that she co-founded, Black Artists of DC, is co-funding this panel that she's talking about. And so, you know, it's a resource for artists, collectors, curators, anybody that is in the Black arts world, specifically in DC, but it has connections throughout. So don't search, do a search, Black Artists of DC. Some of the things that were brought up before, you know, they can be served, they can be addressed if more of us are talking to each other, period. And that means more of the filmmakers are talking to other filmmakers, more of the artists are talking to specifically the same type of artists, we need to be in the room more often, challenging each other, being honest with each other, expressing our concerns with each other. And I just want to say that a lot of it, like you mentioned, that we are always fighting against being people that are under an oppressive rule, because we still are under an oppressive rule. And if we're not currently, then we are dealing with the ramifications in terms of Stockholm syndrome. But it is not in our nature to not be cooperative. It is not in our nature not to build community. It is not in our nature not to help each other. It's not, we have been pushing against our own natural inclinations to be in community. And we have to stop doing that shit. We have to stop doing it. We have been programmed by this American society to be individualists. We are not, that is not how we grow. It is not how we have been, and I say we, you know, a lot of my work is about people of the greater majority. And our society has made itself so that we are shoved information down our throats to believe that we are not of the majority. We, as in people of color, are in the majority. And we have to stop using their lens to look upon each other. And I'll leave that there.
I think we stopped.
That was a good way to end.
Yeah, thank you for that, but are there any more questions
Yes, I have
and comments?
one question.
That's Tony Kate's Taylor.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, my name is Zoe. So I really love the film, and as someone who wants to become a filmmaker one day, that was so beautiful. My comment, and then it will lead to a question. I think a lot of like organizers and activists can learn from artists about how to resist. And the main thing that I took away from the film is her active resistance throughout the entire thing. How her parents didn't want her to create, but she resisted. How white supremacy didn't want her to create, but she resisted and continued to create throughout her entire life. So my question is, how do we get artists to resist, I guess, like the US empire, art being underfunded and not supported, and knowing that their work is very vital to keeping liberatory movements going, and also like preserving their work as well? That was the question.
And that's for me?
Oh, anybody.
Okay.
All being done.
Yeah, because a lot of those things we addressed in various ways earlier in terms of one of the main things is if you should not be doing this alone. Plug into, whether you plug into Black Artists of DC, whether you plug into some of the other because there's not a lot, but there are some other artist collectives in this area and in the States. But do research. There are other artist collectives throughout the art continuum. There's Spiral. There's there's Afrocobra. There's thank you, Aziza. And then what is the other one? The one
National Conference of Artists.
National Conference of Artists. There's Where We At Black People. Where We At Black People. Where we at? Thank you. And then there are others. And even if you have
Black Dandelion.
Black Dandelion, that's right.
What about Illusions of Grandeur?
Delusions of Grandeur. Yes, Delusions of Grandeur is one as well. Yes. Thank you. And then figure out how to create your own. Plug into research, plug into the history, plug into something that is currently existing, and then figure out how to create your own, contribute.
GABA, Golden Age of Black Art.
And then remember, you cannot do this by yourself. You should not, or you can't, but don't. Don't. And I can't remember the other part of your question.
I guess too, just like, how do you continue to motivate artists if they can't survive, if they can't pay their bills, if they can't, you know, it's kind of hard to create if you don't know if your lights are going to stay on. So I'm wondering, what are your like words of motivation for people to continue to create under this system?
Yeah, and that's a loaded one, that might take a, but like I said, the same thing applies. You need to research, go in terms of seeing what already exists and is helping current artists as well. And then you need to figure out what is your group, what is your clans, not the word, your tribe. And then, I hate to say this, but it's also, being an artist is not for everyone. It's not. I'm just saying. And there are other ways of supporting creativity and creative life force in general that are out there as well. And I'm not trying to walk anybody back from that path, but you have to have some serious cojones.
Want it bad.
You have to, absolutely. You have to know that you know that you know that you know that this is what my heart, this is what my authentic self needs to put across in this world and keep on going. You have no choice. And when people throw at you like other things, like it's like they're picking at your spine. Like, you don't know me. You don't know what I was put on this earth to give.
But I just want to add, I want to add, because Tony Kate is my special sister. I think her example is, you could do any other work. Like I did gardening to do Bush Mama, my film. So I don't think our art could feed us. My wife and me have always promised not to eat film money, we recycle it. But we have to work anywhere else as a migrant worker to feed your art. Because if the motivation is the state of your people. Your art is built on the state of your people. It is your people that drive you to keep doing what you're doing. But if you are financed, this is what's happening in the outside world of that. So for me, you have to create, even if it is dishwashing, that is one. And then you do a film or whatever you want to do. So for me, your grandmother is the best, because I know her very close to the last minute. So for me, I did all kinds of work because I didn't want, if I'm financed by them, I have to sing and dance for them. I knew that from day one in school. So for me, you have to create, work somewhere else, do your heart, work for your heart. Because for me, it's the state of your people that they don't pay you, they don't have the money to pay you. Yeah. Black people's state of situation is not like this, I'm sorry a little bit about this Obama, you know, and now the new skirt at Obama. That is a very deceptive planet, because I was in a film conference in Dubai, International Film Festival. They were telling us it was icon. Now Obama is becoming a president, so what's going to happen to black films? I said, there's milk and bread black people need. I'm not going to want them to be a film financier now. But black people always put their trip on people who cannot deliver. I was never believed that Obama is going to finance nor Hollywood, nor this white supremacist planet. But that's one thing. But you can work anywhere if you want to finance and be free of your voice, free from being owned by somebody, to speak and dance for them. This is the dilemma of black people for centuries. For me, the problem that we don't have an independent black producers, that all producers study to be like white people, a white film company, is our problem. Sharik and me want a producer that believes like us on the importance of the community story. So I keep thinking, but get on any job, work anywhere to finance your heart.
Sandra.
You have someone
this is
speaking
Jackie.
here. You may have to hold the mic closer.
I just wanted to know, where can we get the film if we want a copy of it, or is that not available?
Well, actually, the film is just this week became available on Amazon Prime, which is where you can rent it or buy it if you want to do that. But you can watch it for free on AmericanMasters.com, PBS.org. But you can rent it or buy it on Amazon Prime.
No, darling, I have a last word. No, I don't have a last word.
My last word is this has been wonderful. It absolutely is. Whenever we are in gathering, whenever we're in communication, see Johnny Roy again, see Kojo, to see all of them. It's life-giving. Thank you very much for having me. Sandy, that was wonderful. Amber, you're gorgeous. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you to Hailey and Sharik. Thank you for.
One more.
Hi, can folks hear me at the back?
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Miki, and I loved this film. It was so emotional and beautiful to see, so thank you so much for your amazing work. I just graduated from college, but a big part of it was I went to a PWI, and me and some colleagues restarted a magazine that used to be functional by Black students 50 years ago. And a big part of that was like working within the paradox of erasure and immortality, especially with Black voices and Black history, especially within like young people. And I'm not an artist, but I am a writer, and I want to know how does one find the balance between creating and like restarting and reigniting the legacy that's been forgotten, but also creating your own and making sure that anyone that comes after you also sees what's happening in this moment right now. So if I can also re-ask the question or anything of that sort, but thank you once again. Really, this was amazing.
That was beautiful.
Well, I think that part of my motivation in telling this story is that I feel like even though we're obviously talking about a particular time period, historical developments of the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, that there's a lot that we can reflect on from that time period that still is relevant now. There's still so much about Augusta Savage's story that is relevant now. I mean, as Hailey was just saying. So in some ways, we're just looking at different strategies for how, in fact, we can hold on to our memories, how we can hold on to our history. And so it's interesting now that I think that there's a lot of technology that's available that does make that easier in terms of making making us as individual documentarians, as individual collectors, that we can function in that way. We don't always need, a big screen or a massive premiere or something to be able to do that. A lot of the small, almost boutique periodicals have played a very important role in our culture, especially for Black women in terms of poetry and other forms like that. And even if there are only a limited number of copies that you're able to generate, that those are important. It's very, very interesting to me in terms of this whole idea of what Black women have done. Augusta Savage, when she was in Paris, made friends with this group of women who were the Nadal sisters, who actually were the first people to ever create the concept of a cultural salon. And there were three women who were actually sisters, but it was a group of women who were working together, and they published a periodical that was like life-changing, but they only did 4 issues. And some of the men of the Negritude movement basically copied all their stuff and basically kind of redid it. So I think the whole idea of what are we really doing this for? Is it pride of authorship, or is it making sure that there is something that can be saved and something that can be passed on and something that others can learn from? And I think that's what Augusta Savage was saying, that my work, it's great, it's fine if it can exist, but the passing it on is just as important, and leaving the record.
So we have another round of applause.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This deserves a longer session. We can have a retake. This conversation about artists and writers about artists, critics, art critics, art preservers, archives, is really very, very, very critical. And I think this film demonstrates that in a big way. We're trying to do some of that around here as well. And we're trying to create our own archive. And anybody that wants to work on that is welcome to. We're also trying to create a larger space so that more of this can go on with more people, so we don't have people standing up, and then we can bring in more sophisticated audio and visual systems. So it's possible. We could do a whole lot of stuff. One thing that she did in that film was inspire me. How did she decide she was going to educate anybody that wanted to come by and take art classes? And how many people came through there? 2,500. 2,500.
What about the co-op, Mama Cherie?
I'm glad you brought that up. So we're also trying to turn Sankofa Video Books into a co-op. So that means worker-owned, community-owned, and founder-owned. So anybody who's interested in being part of that, let me know. Thank you, Lise. So we have a lot of plans. Stay in touch. I'm so glad that we had this wonderful event. And I know you had more questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to you, but please give us another round of applause as we
Thank you to the fabulous elementary trailer. To the always fabulous elementary trailer. Thank you to Amber. Thank you so much.